Okay, cool. We can start. Oh, when the countdown. 5, 4, 3,
Three,
2,
two,
1.
one.
Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
That might have chopped up a little bit.
Oh, did it? Why would it do this? Is it still doing that?
No, but it did for like a second, right as you were talking.
Okay, I can start. I can start it over. It's like as soon as we start, then all of a sudden my Wi-Fi decides that it doesn't
Yeah.
want to be cool. But all right, try one more time. Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi, everyone. It's Bayana and Portia embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. We're continuing our mini series discussing Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda, and today we're talking about Bayana's short story pick, Shadow Dreams.
Yes. So, do you like the Dora Milaje vibranium lore, interdimensional shenanigans? Then you'll love Shadow Dreams by Linda D. Addison, the story of a Dora in training whose lucid dreaming ends up connecting her to another version of herself across the multiverse, one who will do anything to save her dying Wakanda. I'm very excited about this. I will say it's funny because like initially when I first read it, at first I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, like a cute like Dora training story, like awesome, this is gonna be fun. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, we're going across the multiverse. Like this might be my thing,
Mhm.
um, and it was. So yeah. Oh, I forgot. I'm like looking back at like my notes that I put in the agenda, and I was like, we're reading Shadow Dreams, aka for Wakanda without question, because that's essentially
The
how this
vibes.
story goes. Yeah. So we open up with a 14-year-old Dira. She's from a village. It doesn't say whether it's a small village or not, but like a village that's kind of far away from the Golden City and like, you know, um the capital of Wakanda. Um her grandmother's just passed, so she's 2 weeks late to training. She like her mom was kind of like, you should go, but when she found out that her grandmother was dying, she was like, no, I want to stay until so that she could say goodbye and not just, leave. Um, and also there's like a moment where her grandmother, like one of the last things her grandmother tells her,
Mhm.
it's be the best you can for Wakanda. So I think that that's like, or it is a very like, it's what kind of it's Dira's like kind of driving force, I guess is the best way to put it. And it's also again like it comes up again with other characters, but for all of them the most important thing is like preserving Wakanda, um, and doing what they can for that. It's not necessarily, doing what they can in the sense, we get some like individualism, but I think that like community is really important in this story. And I think just in really all of them, and in Wakanda in general, of just like everyone doing what they can to help each other and to help like the whole, as opposed to like this like, individualistic uh ideology that we get in other places. Um so she's greeted by Uto, who's another trainee who takes her to the Upanga, which is the like training building. And as we kind of go, like Dira is very much a little fish in a big pond. She's like looking at all of, the city and all of these things that she's never seen before, never experienced. Um, and before they walk inside, Uto tells her, your village is Wakanda. You are from Wakanda, all villages. Um, so again, just kind of like, um, just kind of reiterating, I guess, the point that like if you're working for the Dora Milaje, your whole like thing is for Wakanda specifically. You can't have any like biases toward any like specific villages.
Yeah, and that's interesting given the fact that like so many of the different villages, like from my understanding, have like their different affiliations, right? Like there's a different like tribal groups within Wakanda, right? And even from the movies, we know that like Nakia is from like the River Tribe,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like the tribe in crap. In one of the stories, I think it is it's been a minute since I've read them. In one of the stories, we see that the like the tribe that like maintains the heart-shaped herb, like that's a whole other like community as well. So there's like different nations within
Mm-hmm.
Wakanda, like tribal nations within Wakanda. And it's interesting, like they have their own cultures and stuff like that, but they're all like interwoven under like Wakanda's terrain and like legislature and all that. And so it's interesting that her grandma comes from this like stance of like, even though she's been part of like this community for her life and she has like brought up her granddaughter in this life, she has like this idea of like pushing her towards loyalty for the country as a whole, rather than like represent us within this new position they're taking on, kind of thing.
Right.
um which I feel like is what often happens, is like you represent us whenever you're showing up somewhere else, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that like having Uto tell Deer like immediately, like that's not gonna fly. Like, you know what I mean? Just in case that like just in case she was coming in with that notion. Whereas like Deer kind of accepts that very quickly. She's not like, oh, but what am I, you know what I mean? Like she doesn't seem to have her personal ties to her village don't seem to overpower this like kind of duty she feels to Wakanda. Um And then she also notices that the building is really close to the palace, and so she was saying how she didn't realize they would be so close. And Uto's kind of like, well, the king is Wakanda, right? Like which is also an interesting notion, but makes sense given that they are his like bodyguards. Um, but yeah, like to protect him is to protect Wakanda. So of course, like we would be nearby, even though we're just like training. Um, So we go inside, get into the training area. She is told to pick a weapon and then is immediately tested by her new teacher, who is Okoye. Um, and I did want to note, like, so, and part of this could be because I just finished reading kind of recently the Gilded Ones trilogy. Um, but then also just thinking about like a lot of different like fantasy stories where it's like centers people who are like training in some kind of military or like guard type nature. Usually the trainings are very brutal, whereas like in this case it just feels like school. You know what I mean? Like it's not, and not in a bad way. I mean it kind of in like a refreshing way of like, yeah, this is going to be hard. And they're not like you can't just coast by. You're gonna have to like push yourself, but you're also not gonna be like abused and brutalized. You're gonna be supported and like taught and guided through the process. And you don't have like jealous uh classmates and like all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like folks are all supportive and like helping folks kind of move along and move through. Which isn't to say that I don't like the other stories where that isn't the case. It just was like I think one of the few times where I've seen it recently. So it was just a cool difference.
As someone who has not picked up the rest of the Gilded One series yet, um, it's interesting to like do that comparison, because yeah, that like the Gilded Ones like is pretty like brutal in its
Yeah.
like training montage and stuff.
But it's also like a brutal story in general, which is
Yeah,
not
the
like,
stakes are
so
really
again,
high.
it's not a negative or positive. It's because I'm
Yeah.
thinking like the blood trials too is like extremely brutal. It's freaking wild. And that can be great. But also it's interesting to then just like I think reading it was like my preconceived notions of like what the training was gonna look like.
Mhm.
Um And then when she like gets beat by Okoye, and I don't remember specifically, but just like the whole way that it kind of happens, and Okoye is still like, we've seen her in movies and in like comics and stuff, and like she's still like the same stern whatever, but she's also kind and gentle, and is like, again, trying to guide these girls into becoming Dora Milaje, and not like um trying to like beat these ideologies and like skills into them. um But yeah, so either way, it's still training is still training, right? Like she's still working out. That's it is difficult regardless. So she that night gets to her bed, she passes out. She's like immediately sleep. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Um and but then she dreams about training. And so sort of we kind of see her settling in the routine of like they train most days a week. They have a day or like a half day to do like community service, and then a half a day to kind of do your own thing, rest and relaxation. um but even as that's happening, she's still dreaming, or whenever she goes to sleep, she's training in her dreams. um but it's not helping her like improve, and she's tired because it's not actually giving her rest. Um so yeah, so as this is happening, she's also like becoming impatient about her slow improvement, because she wants to be one of the best fighters in Wakanda, which is like, I get it. And I think one of the other things is like reminding myself reading this, like she's 14, so it's definitely the impatience felt true in some ways. Like everyone's kind of like, why are you rushing? It's not that big of a deal. But she's like, um, but she's just like, no, I should be, they're getting moved up in groups as they improve. And she's just like, no, I should be getting better. I should be improving faster. Even though everyone else is not really, it's telling her it's not that, everyone else is telling her that to be patient and to let it come.
Mhm.
Even Okoye is like, oh, if you're lucid dreaming, which is the other thing, she's not keeping the dreams secret. Um, she's like, that could help with your training, but it will probably still take time. So like, if I felt like you were slacking or could be doing more, like then I would tell you, but you're fine. You don't need to
Mhm.
worry about it. Um,
I feel like some of her like her issues with not excelling quicker are like classic overachiever issues. Like there's something about like when you're used to doing well on things and you're suddenly like placed in a position where you're not in immediately like seeing results and like in a way that like you get a level of like praise or recognition for, then you're like, how do I get that praise or
mhm,
recognition? Because I'm used to getting it, and as I'm used to getting it like fairly quickly, so I must be doing something wrong. Like there's a connotation of like if I'm not on top, then I must
mhm,
be behind. And
mhm,
um I like that. That is, I mean, we don't really explore like the where that comes from with her. Like we just kind of get like her being there, which is like that's life. Like you're just there and you have to like
yeah,
work through it, process it. But it's interesting that like kind of like I wish there was like if there was like a little bit more to the story, like a little bit before in her like village life. Like what kind of student was she? What kind of um requirements does she meet to even get into this program, and how far does she
mhm,
exceed them to, because we don't hear anyone else from her village going, so how far does she have to exceed things to be the
right.
top person in her village to end up in this program kind of thing. And it sounds like it's like
Right, and,
a
like, she comes in
continuation of
with,
that.
um yeah, and she comes in with, like, some fight training at least, and, like, Okoye kind of, critiques her, like, knife swings just because 'cause they're not really forceful enough. Like, it's not like she's trying to, like, actually kill someone, which is what, it's why you have a knife to fight with. Not always, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I think also I feel like that was the other thing about the stories that I felt like for a short story with like within the confines, like it does everything it needs to do, but it definitely felt like it could be expanded. Both in the beginning and in the end, it was like there's story there that is not like delved into, that if it was, I would definitely want to read. Um so yeah, so then Dira goes to sleep, and finds someone else in her dream this time. It's slightly different than before where she's just there in this training room by herself. Um it's a girl who looks like Dira, but in terms of like body and shape, but her face is blurred, so you can't really see her. She introduces herself as Iyawa, from another version of Wakanda. Dira still thinks of her as like as her dream self. She's not convinced that this girl is from like somewhere in the multiverse. Um so she finds out like her Iyawa's people are sick and dying because of vibranium poisoning, which I really love that this story is after, um what is it called? Um the Monsters of Minna Nagai,
Mhm.
because that story literally deals with what that like the vibranium poisoning in Bashinga's time. And uh so it just gives like in terms of like ordering of the book, it like really helps because it just gives immediate context to what happens if you are around or um ingest, or you know what I mean, or like interacting with raw vibranium. um so that part is cool because it gives a little like shorthand that you don't have to, um it doesn't have to like I guess explain as much because we get that story right before that kind of sets that context. So yeah, so she mentions that her people are dying because of the vibranium poisoning, and then she also says that she and Dira shared DNA. Um, we don't really get too deep into that though, because the focus turns to Dira and her impatience about um improving. And so Iyao was like, "Oh, I know about a gene that inhibits the body from making muscle, and I know how to release it. And then you can improve, like you'll improve because you'll be able to build more muscle." Dira, this sweet, sweet summer child, asks no questions and is just like, "Yeah, let's do it."
It's like it's funny because I
You
was
know?
just talking to a friend about like dreams and like lucid dreaming in particular, but like just dreams in general, and like how sometimes we do things in dreams with dream logic because we're just like, oh, it's a dream. So like
Mhm.
even if you start like having a lucid moment, you're like, it's a dream. I can move in this like it's a dream. I'll be okay. I can play stuff around. Um, but then in in some certain dreams, you test those dream barriers and then you like end up forcing yourself awake, or something happens in the dream that weirds you out because of whatever you just did trying to apply dream logic. Like it'll so I could see how
Mhm.
like Dara like has a moment where she's just like where she's so disbelieving of it being more than what being it exactly what Yawa says it is, and actually interpreting it as a like, oh, this is just like a dream function that I haven't like fully figured out yet. Um, it's funny how that like subconscious like doubt can like carry in even when you're like trying to be like I mean she's trying to be asleep. She should be asleep. She needs to be rested
Mhm.
for the training that she's gonna have in the day to come. And then I think that was something else that about this story that I thought was interesting that I wish there would have been a little bit more input about was like, um, why did she think that her dreams were the solution to
Mhm.
gaining a power boost? Like, had that
Right.
happened to her in the past? Like, why did she think like, oh, automatically because I'm lucid dreaming, then that means I can have an edge on my train? Like, where did that
Mhm.
logic come from for her?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if it's like because of some particular knowledge of lucid dreaming, or if she was just thinking like, if I'm practicing in my head, I should be able to like translate that to my body, like what the justify or not justification, but like what her thought process was um around that for sure. Um so the next day we see immediate results. But yeah, again, she's not asking any questions. She's not trying to figure out like what Iyawa might want. Like, you know what I mean? Like Iyawa mentions that her land is dying, and Dira kind of like, or I don't even know that Dira skates by it. I think Iyawa is just like, oh, but I can help you. But there's no like, they just don't talk enough before Dira's like, yeah, let's let's do it. Um so yeah, so she gets immediate results. She's eating way more. She's improving faster. She's getting much stronger. She's getting faster. Um, like it's noticeable. And for her, like she is not losing energy. Like as she's doing it, she's gaining energy. And so Okoye is immediately suspicious. I mean, they all kind of are like, "Oh, like what's changed?" Because it's I don't know. It's just like funny because it's like, okay, you go from not even like she's the worst in class, but just go from like not improving as swiftly to then immediately like lapping everyone during the like warm up trainings and being like, "I can go some more. I'm ready." And it's like, girl, it sounds like you're juicing. Like this is
Like, are
uh
you Lance Armstrong? Like, what are
like what's
we
happening here?
what
Like
are
what
we
have
getting
you?
into?
And like Okoye is like, let's spar. She doesn't even
Mhm.
like ask any questions really. She's just like, you feeling okay? And they're like, and I think I also like that they are genuinely asking if she's okay. You know what I mean? Like that's the other thing, but it's just like, um, yeah, it's just very interesting. Um, and so yeah, so she spars with her, and and like she literally or Dira like matches Okoye in this spar, like is not able to
Take her
neither of
out.
them are able to win this fight.
Yeah.
So they're like they come to a draw, which doesn't like again does not make sense
Doesn't make any
given
sense. Yeah.
how she was. It doesn't make any sense. Um,
Especially given who
so
Okoye
Okoye is
is,
like,
because do we know if Okoye is general at this point? Like, because she's definitely
I'm
like
not sure.
part of the Dora, but she's not like we don't know if she's the Dora in charge. And it wouldn't make sense for her
Yeah.
to be the Dora in charge if she's at the school during.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
feel
it's
like
kind of
this
yeah.
maybe is before she becomes general, although it's not clear. Um, but it definitely feels like that because it's like you're probably if you're the general, you would be what T'Challa or whoever's king at that time. Um, because I don't know if they even mention if it's T'Challa or not. I
Right.
think they just say
Yeah.
the
I don't
king.
think I yeah. I don't think I remember hearing that
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so she's like, I'm gonna send you to get checked up by a doctor. But again, folks are worried about her. She's like, she's not in trouble. They're literally just like, are you good? Like, we need to make sure everything's okay. Um, and so they after the tests happen, she's speaking to Okoye, and so they can tell she hasn't taken anything. There's nothing like in her system, but they also do notice that this gene has been altered. And Dira is kind of like she doesn't tell them what happened, but she doesn't tell them that it didn't happen, you know?
I
Like
don't know. There's so much about this that I feel like is wrapped up in like the fact that we're supposed to just take it on the nose that like Dira as like a teenager who has been just trying to like level up is just accepting of things. But I'm like, I would have
mhm.
questions. I'm like you were saying, like she didn't question um when Ayala was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just like give you a boost and you're gonna wake up and you're gonna have the ability to do more. And she's like, that's what I've been looking for. Love it. Thank you. I like she didn't ask any questions at all. And I think it's like if I went to the doctor and they just were like, "Oh, your genes have been altered," I'd be like, I think we should talk about this because I don't know why my dream state was able to change my genetic makeup."
Right. But I do think she says that like cuz she's like isn't can't you change that with your mind? And they're like, "Yeah, but it takes like a lot to do that." And I think in her head she's thinking that she just did it while she was asleep, which Adam in the chat calls it lucid steroids, which like yeah, that's what it's like. But I think to her, she's just like, yeah, I just did it in my sleep, but she's not really questioning like whether that makes sense or what, like whatever it is. She's just like, yeah, I get to I'm improving. It worked, and like you know, my dreams told me about it. Um, it's just it's all very suspicious. Um, but
I
either
always
way,
have
she doesn't
questions.
like
Yeah.
yeah, but she doesn't. So like she's just like she doesn't tell them everything, but it's very clear that the gene has been altered, so she can't like deny it. But
Hmm.
they also can't really do anything at this point. So they're like, okay, well, just keep training and we'll watch you and we'll, you know what I mean? Like we'll just see
We'll
what
monitor
because
the
I'm like, I don't know.
situation.
Can you
Yeah.
reverse the gene? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that's possible. Um so yeah. So then later that night she is back with Yawa. Um and again, Dira is still thinking of her as her dream self until she realizes like Iyawa's kind of just asking like, oh, how'd your day go or whatever, or what happened today. And so that kind of tips Dira off into like, you don't know what's going on during like in my waking hours. Um, then you're not really my dream self. And she tries to make it like she's been lied to. And Iyawa's like, you are the one
How could
who
I
said
lie
that.
when
You
you ask
decided
no
that.
backup questions? Like, you
One, you
did
didn't ask
not,
any questions. Two, I literally told you I was from another dimension. Like
you
that was
just
one
didn't
of the first
believe
things I
me.
said.
Right.
You didn't believe me, but that ain't got nothing to do with me. Like that's all you. Um so now she's like being suspicious. Um sorry, one second. If sign me out for some reason. All right, I'm back. So yeah, so now she's like suspicious of Iyawa. Um which she should have just been from jump. But anyway, Iyawa's like, "Look, I need your help."
Hmm.
And now Dira again is like, what do you mean by that? Like you've already
Now
lied
she
to
asks
me.
questions. Yeah. Now there's questions to ask. Not it's after the fact they've changed your genetic code. But you ask questions
Right.
after
After.
they've done that.
It's like you didn't think to ask like I mean, but I guess okay. Again, she has probably never been put in a position this in like this. Um and she's not asking and like this I mean to say that like it seems to me like she has not been cheated or like pulled into a bargain before in that, you know what I mean? Like she kind of just
Hmm.
takes people at their like somebody saying, I'll help you. She's not thinking, oh, what do you want from me? She's just like, oh, cool. Love that for me. Thanks. And so
I feel like if Amani were here, it'd be like sweet summer child. Like I think
literally it's just like, girl, you've not lived.
literally.
Clearly you've been through nothing. Not to quote Kendrick Lamar, but you haven't gone through anything yet. So
It's
we just
funny
have to
because
have some
I'm trying to think of other songs to quote in this, and I can't because all I have are those different
no.
songs. in my
That's all
head.
that's in the brain at the moment. I'm surprised it took us this long to get there. Um, but yeah, she hasn't gone through nothing yet. So this is her first time realizing that you can't and
There's snakes in your camp,
it's a very
in
like
your
cynical
head.
way to think, but it's just like you gotta ask questions. And
Hmm.
even if she told you this outright and you decided that it was worth it, then cool. But like you have to know that before you just start accepting stuff from people, especially like random people in your head. Like and you can't see her face. Like there's just so many things that we would have needed to
It
discuss.
and initially when I like so have you watched like I think this was like season one or maybe like it was like the Christmas episode that was attached to season one of like Black Mirror.
Um, I have seen the first season of Black Mirror, but it's been a minute, and I've only seen those episodes once.
I think it was like the one with John Hamm in it. It was like they basically installed like every person had like a chip installed in their brain where you can record or unrecord your like different moments in life. Like you choose what you do. Like you choose what you want to like
Mm.
set or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but an additional component of this was that um as the story unfolds for him, because we see him doing his daily routine, but we learn that he can't see certain memories. Like he's trying to like go, he's flipping through his memories, and there's certain that are like blocked off. He can't see the faces of the people, and
Mm.
then um he starts kind of like being around in places where he's seeing those people he can't see in the like in person that he has in his memories, and then we find out that like he had a like he was a bad person in a relationship, and she had him blocked. She blocked her and
Mm.
their kid from him, and he also kids blocked from her. So like she knows who he is, she knows his face, she's not around him. And that's what it felt like for me. Like Ayala, when you can't see her face, I'm like, is there a reason
Mhm.
why we can't see her face? Like, is
Right.
like has her brain like protected her by like not showing her the face of this
Right.
person? Like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening?
Mhm. Yeah, and I also kind of wondered too about like, because I feel like I read somewhere, but it's super vague in my mind that like we have a hard time picturing faces, especially like what like especially like in dreams and that kind of stuff, especially if you're like making up stuff, like it's hard to like picture. Um, so I don't know. It's very creepy, and I just feel like she was not suspicious enough.
Definitely no Netflix and Black Mirror episodes for her. Like to like
No.
put her in any state of mind. Like I should be suspicious of someone if they're in my dream and they're talking directly to me and I can't see their face. That should be
Mhm.
suspicious. Just a little flag on the
Something.
play.
Just a
Something.
Just a little bit. So Iyawa tells Dira that the king is dying in her Wakanda, and they want the genes of this dimension's king so that they can try to save him. Which, of course, sounds sus. And now Dira is asking questions. She's like, I don't really understand. Like, this is feeling like this is potentially dangerous. Um, because in her head she's like, you're going like, if I do this, are like, who's to say that you wouldn't like alter those genes and put our king in danger. um and Iyawa's kind of just like, she she's kind of like trying to get Deer trying to get Dira to take her at her word, but like, again, Dira already thinks you lied to her even though you didn't. And it's a wild question. It doesn't mean that it's like a bad question, but it's a clear, it doesn't, it makes sense that it would give her pause, I guess. So then Iyawa reveals how she truly looks in reality, and like how she's been warped by the raw vibranium, so she has like two extra arms, and like she's just like um been deformed because of the access that they've used, or not the access, like what they've used. They used to use it in their weapons and in their clothes and all that stuff, but it was not treated. um and then she also explains that she has the power to connect to Dira through dreams, but she's the only one who can do it. So this is like, it's not like they have other people in her Wakanda, who can like hop into their like either um duplicates or like related folks. So she's like, I have to, I'm the only one who can do it, so I have to do it, right? She's trying to save her Wakanda.
Another ref
So
oh,
Dira is like, huh?
I was gonna say another like reference is like horror related is tethers. Like they kind of feel like there's
Mhm.
tethers from us.
Yes.
Um, but also it was interesting to me that like their interest in her world was something that was so like intimate, like DNA, and not something that would be like, what is your treatment process for raw vibranium so that it can stop keeping
Right.
us sick? Like, why wasn't that
Right.
the
I
investigation?
assumed because it was so far gone,
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. It
and
sounded like
because the king is
post-apocalyptic for them.
dying, they're just
Yeah.
like, at this point, we just need something to keep him alive, and then we can figure out it figured out from there. But yeah, it definitely felt like it was like yeah, like you said, like apocalyptic type situation. They're like, this is an emergency. We could do like they're past the preventative stuff. Which is interesting. I'm just like I'm very curious about this other spot and just like how they've lasted this long to not without like trying to figure out a way to get around this, I guess.
Mhm.
Um yeah. So Dira is like, no, I have to, you're potentially gonna put like I can't put my king in like my Wakanda in danger. Iyawa is like, you can't escape me. You have to sleep eventually. Which
How
is
creepy
freaking
is
it is so creepy. It's crazy. She's
you're
like,
gonna you're not
look,
going anywhere. Like you're even if you fight your sleep, you're gonna fall asleep sometime, and I'm gonna be right there,
and I'll be
ready,
there.
lurking in your brain.
Mm-hmm. It's wild.
I'm like, what kind of like it really sounds like Ayala has nothing better to do with her day because their only hope is to break through Dira and her like Wakanda. So it's like she has nothing better than to
Mm-hmm.
do but to sit and monitor when homegirl's asleep. And then she'll be there. Like she doesn't have to even set up an alert system. She's just there. She has nowhere else to go. She lives in Dara's head rent free, literally.
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 And Dara can do nothing about it. Yikes.
That it sounds like an anonymous letter that you get slipped with like the newspaper and magazine clippings through under a
Mm-hmm.
door.
Like,
Like
I know what you did.
the threat level is so
You
bad.
have to sleep eventually. She said, I'm gonna just sit right here and wait till you go to sleep. Yikes. So Dira bolts awake and she immediately goes to find Okoye, which I love that she's like, let me find the adults. This is not something that I can deal with on my own. So at first Okoye is kind of like, because it's the middle of the night, she's like, can this wait? And Dira's like, nope, this is extremely dangerous, and I don't know if I'm a danger to Wakanda. I don't know what is going on here. Um,
And
so
she even
Okoye is like,
has
all right,
like
she brings
she even has like a suicidal like warning, but like she has like suicidal like ideation about like how to save Wakanda from her being a problem before she even goes to Okoye. She's like, well, if I don't find help for this, then this is my other way out. And it's like a
Well,
I gotta get
she's also saying that like though, but she was saying because Dira or not Dira, sorry, Iyawa was saying like, I have access to your genes, so I can like pass stuff on
mhm.
to, you know what I mean? Like I
Like to
can
infect
make
other
this dangerous, and
people.
so,
Yeah.
and so Dira is also wondering. She's like, if I were to die, does that like I don't know if that'll actually
Take it.
change
Yeah, if it'll
anything
help.
or like
Yeah.
help. Um. So yeah, so she brings or Okoye brings in um this advanced researcher. Her name is Zira, and she can feel the truth through touch. Um, so after Dira kind of like debriefs them, explains to them what happened, um, they send her back into her dreams so that she can kind of get more info from Iyawa and figure out like what's going on. They do like instead of excuse me, they like take her into um I think it's the lab or like the hospital. They like are monitoring her vitals and stuff. And so yeah, so Dara goes back into her dreams. Iyawa explains how she programmed a virus into her genes, which I don't think Keyshawn is here, but when she does listen to this, I'm sure this is not possible. But I do want to know. I still have questions. How do you program a virus? I know that like Marvel though, especially and like just sci-fi in general, they like there's a merging of like tech and genetics and stuff. And I know that in real life there is some of that, but in my
Weren't they
head I'm like,
doing yeah, this may not even be related, and I know Dr. Kishana will put me in my place for speaking out of turn here. But like didn't they have for a while where they were like actively messing around with like genetic code for like children like in utero, like they were like changing like gender or sex in utero.
Mm,
Like I
I feel
remember
like I
reading about that a while back.
heard about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that was, but I remember it being like part of like discourse for a second about like that's what something
Mhm.
that geneticists were working on. Um
Right.
and I'm like, is that the level of like interaction that would have to happen for you to like one, yeah, if it is possible, is that the level of interaction to put a virus into something? Like you have to like mess around with like the actual genetic code? Or
Mhm.
is it more like in my mind, like sending an email and adding a little attachment to it, like you're just like
Right, cuz
attaching something
when you
to
tell me you programmed a virus into my genes, I'm thinking you're sitting at a computer like type like the like classic hacker like in a movie thing where they're just like typing on the keyboard and that's it. That's like what that's the visual in my head. I know that that's not what they're saying, but I mean she was able to like disable that one gene. So clearly like it feels plausible in this
and
world.
she didn't show any
But I'm
like
also like,
medical like devices were
no.
being used when she did it. She just like, I'm gonna talk to
But
you
she's
and
like in
now
her
you current
brain. But she's in her
yeah.
brain, so there's like, I don't know, it's levels to it. I know that this is not like I know that we're reading sci-fi fantasy, like I'm aware. I just also am like, what does that mean? You know? So yeah. But also because like, what you're talking about and like um I feel like a lot of it is around babies and like, people who are not yet alive and born and whose genetics or DNA or whatever aren't fully solidified. But like if I'm a grown person, like I've been out in the world for 14 years and you can like change my genes. I have questions.
Right.
And the
Your
answer
DNA
could
has
be
been
this is sci-fi,
DNA'd.
Bayana, like relax. But I'm also I just want to know.
That's what I kind of kept making peace with when I was reading it. I was like, I'm gonna just leave this alone because we're not seeing the process and there's a reason.
Right.
And I'm gonna just leave it alone. Like, I'm gonna leave it alone.
Right.
I love that. Like, Adam is with us. I'm like, oh, yeah, like when they're children, the like modifications that can be made, like that, like a case that he's talking about. But like he's like Adam is talking about, sorry, gender. But Adam is talking about like specifically how like the ethics of it and like the law around it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that's a whole other thing there too. Cause like what does Wakanda
Yeah.
even have in regards to like genetic practice and stuff like that? And
Mhm.
so I
But
feel like
also
is
we're
it
dealing with
even
somebody from a different Wakanda. So they
right?
clearly they couldn't even get the raw vibranium together. So I'm just like
That's what's funny to me, to be honest. It's like you're the only person in your world who can do this. That's us that you're telling. Like you're saying that to me. I don't know if I believe you about that.
mhm.
Secondly, you're telling me that your world is falling apart. This is the last urgent way to do something about it. And but your world is so behind that you can't save your own people, but it's so forward that you can change my genetic code and I'm in a whole different universe. Like
Right.
it's doing a little
But I
bit
wonder
too much.
I think for me I'm wondering because she did again like she did say that she's the only one who can like jump into minds like this. So I'm wondering
Mhm.
if I don't know if it's like the vibranium, I don't know if it's like a mutation, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if she has some other thing going on and that it's not
Power set,
like
yeah.
or her Wakandan technology and more just like something
Mhm.
that's innate with her. Um there's just so many questions, but again, because it's a short story, like it's fine that it's not answered, but it's just interesting because it's like if it was expanded, these are all questions I would have and I would want like the intricacies of like how it works and how it all comes together. And of course, like, we're spending a entire podcast episode on it, so we're dissecting more than I think you would if you were just reading it
Right.
regularly.
Of course.
But that's the point. Like, yeah. Um well, Adam says, surprise, she's a mutant and it's a secret X-Men crossover. I mean, that's one thing about this
We're about to get to a point.
anthology.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about to get to something not quite that, but you're on the track. But also like that's the one cool thing about or not the one a cool thing about the anthology is that it does acknowledge the rest of like the Marvel universes. Um, since we're dealing with multiverse right now, but like it doesn't just like have it all happening in a vacuum. It does kind of acknowledge more going on. So yeah, so then Dara starts asking like too many questions. She's kind of like, okay, how would what does this mean? Like, how would you um help the king? Like, just all these questions to the point that Iyawa's like, you told somebody, didn't you? And Dara's like, what? No, like, of course not. Who's gonna believe me? And Iyawa's like, nah, see, okay, so now I have to.
It is
Yeah.
so funny again because like Dara is a trainee. Just this is like what maybe like second or third week in this
Mhm.
training, and clearly Ayawa, who appears to be the same age, is way further advanced in detecting like stealth and like just like stuff that makes her sound like she's like a super spy. Honestly, like she's got like a lot of
Mhm.
training in how to be um vague enough but effective enough at like getting what like reading the person and getting what she needs and all that kind of stuff. Um that like nothing because like in the description of Dara responding, nothing kind of like sounds like she's being completely obvious, but Ayawa just
Mhm.
reads her like a book anyway. Like it's just like,
Yeah.
no, I don't trust
And it's
anything that
like,
you're
why are you asking so
saying.
many questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
You
because
weren't
like
asking
I think
questions
if
before, but now you're asking a
right.
lot of
Now you
questions.
have all
Yeah.
these questions and it's like I feel like if you hadn't been talking to someone, you would have come back here either like, no, I'm not doing it, or like, sure. You know what I mean? Like without all of the extra stuff. So Iyawa attacks Dira and is trying to like merge or fuse into her like dream body, basically. They do have kind of like a little tussle, but Iyawa, Iyawa like comes out on top. And so she wakes. She essentially in doing that, she takes over Dira's body. She wakes up to Okoye and Zira and pretends to be Dira. And so yeah, so like they have her kind of like she isn't able to move because they have some kind of like blocker on her, just in case. Um, and it's really funny because she's trying to like pretend to be Dira, but she immediately exposes herself because she sees Zira and she's like, "You're a mutant," but that's not something that Zira mentioned to Dira at all. It's not something that like was common knowledge. But
Or
I
that
guess she
Jira would
knows.
have picked up, or like would have
Right.
even like been like, oh, if Jira would have picked it up, if she were going to be a person who could pick it up, she would have picked it up when she first met Zira. And at this point,
Mhm.
it's like, no,
No. But Yawa knows a Zira in her uh
universe.
universe that is a mutant. So yeah. So then Zira immediately goes into uh I guess it's still Dira's mind, but like to communicate with Dira to make sure that like she's still there and she's okay. As they're like, the jig is up, Iyawa. Like we know that this is not you. So at that point, Iyawa kind of just realizes she failed, right? Because again, she is the only one who can do this. And then she also kind of reveals that it was a one-way trip. It's not like she can go back um from that. So she also admits that the virus was a bluff. So then we find out she didn't even do the virus, but she did do the other genes. So like it's possible she could have, you know what I mean? It was a good threat. And she gives Dira her body back. Um so Iyawa is no longer a threat, right? So like I like how this ends in the sense that like Iyawa's no longer a threat. She's still like locked within Dira because again, she can't she this is a one-way trip. And she's just like kind of last ditch effort to save Wakanda or save her Wakanda. Um, but and they're all kind of like, relieved. They're like, cool, we handled it. But at the same time, all three of them are like feeling bad for Iyawa and kind of wondering if there is something they can do to help. Um, and obviously, like it's not something that any of them can decide, but they all decide that they'll at least take it to the king and the council to like discuss. Um, and so I really like the way that it ends in the sense that like it doesn't just like villainize Iyawa and this other Wakanda. Um, and I felt like a twist to me on like, things that we see in general of just like Wakanda's closed off and they're not helping folks of like within diaspora, or they are kind of letting all of these atrocities happen while they stay hidden. But in this case, something is brought to them in a completely different universe, and they're like, oh, maybe there is something we can do to help. And just like having that uh problem or question be asked in a multiversal sense, I think is really cool.
It's weird to me because it's like, what? How would you even get in contact with that Wakanda? Why am I losing words?
Hmm.
Uh, how are they even getting in contact with that Wakanda, given that Iyawa is now like stuck on this side? Like
Well, they
maybe Iyawa has like the coordinates or something, but like
Yeah, but
like how do you
they did mention that, like, they were already like, their Wakanda or this Wakanda has research. Like, they've been doing research around the multiverse. So, yeah, maybe like, it seems like Iyawa's still there, so I'm sure she could still help in terms of, like, giving them more information or giving them, like, "Oh, we're"
the
I don't
coordinates? Like
know,
we're
universe.
on the
Yeah,
33rd
whatever
galaxy or
universe
whatever.
they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just I think that because Wakanda is so advanced and they're already doing that research, like, it'll probably take a while. I don't know how quickly it'll be able to happen, but at least, like, it's something that they could be, uh, working on.
It's just funny
But,
because it's like the way that they were so reluctant to pull more people into this issue, and yet they're
mhm.
like, "Oh, we could possibly resolve this by talking." Like, it feels like a wasted effort. Like, it feels like it's not
Well,
gonna move forward in a way,
I
like
mean,
a little
so
bit
to
to me.
me,
Like,
it
it doesn't
feels
sound like
like
it's like a thing that they like on top of their things they would like to do. You know what I mean? Like, they're like have
yeah.
so many other things they're concerned about.
I mean, to me, I think that it's open-ended, and I kinda like that. Again, like, if it was a, uh longer story, or like a novel or something, I think it would be interesting if the king and them were like, nah, and then they have to, go off and do their own thing. Or if they said yes and then they're trying to figure it out. Like, either way, I think whatever the answer is interesting. And then what would happen from there is like a question too. So yeah, it's just like I don't know. I liked the way that it ended just because it was like, okay, yeah, like other Wakanders are also your people. But then also like, what does that mean? Like, how do you do that? How do you whatever? I think that's just like another story that I would like to read and like just expand on this because this is very interesting.
So it
And there's
sounds
just
like for you, you don't mind stories that like if they're short stories, especially, you don't mind if they leave you with questions because it makes you feel like it's like a
no.
good way to like interact with the world if they do give you more. But do you have an issue with that? Like if
Mhm.
you're reading like a standalone, would you have an issue if there's too many questions that are unanswered? Or do you still like those kind of
I
stories?
think it depends. I think it would depend. I think it depends on the story, I think it depends on the author, I think it depends on, like, how they, like, craft it. Because I think that, like, there are stories if there's a story that's, like, it's just open-ended and, like, there's no resolution, I think like, I think there still needs to be a resolution, and I feel like this story does, right? They get Iyawa out of there. They know what's going on, like, they have a game plan to move forward as opposed to, like, some giant mystery that's never resolved or like, you know what I mean? So I think it really depends on what it is that's being left open. Um, but I also just like am someone which I feel like we've talked about on this podcast. I have not yet been able to write a short story because all of my ideas immediately balloon out into like bigger things. And so I found myself doing that with this one, reading it the second time around. Um, as those questions come up being like, "Oh, wow, yeah, like, this could just be expanded into this, and this can do this," but reading it the first time, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is cool." Like, it felt contained, it felt like its own thing. Um, so, yeah, I feel like as long as the story feels contained and, like, there is a clear resolution, if there are things that are still open-ended or it's just like, looking into the future, these are, possibilities, leaving possibilities open as opposed to, like, just straight up questions or unresolved plot lines and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. It sounds like Adam's on the same page of like it depends on which questions are left dangling.
Mhm.
So that's true to me. Like I don't know. I don't mind some stories being kind of like vague in resolution. I'm trying to think of like what's the like dividing point for me. I think if it depends on how much trouble I had with your plot buildup throughout the story.
Mhm.
Like, if I felt like there were too many
Mhm.
questions that were left dangling along the way, and then I get to the end, and none of those like
And
bigger
they're not
threads
answered.
are like clipped, and then I get to the end, and it's just like it's all kind of like in the air. I'm like, then why did we write this? I don't. Why is this a story
Yeah,
to like
exactly.
engage with if
So
I'm
that's
not
why I
gonna
mean, like,
answer
it really
something?
depends on,
Yeah.
like, how it's crafted, but, like, I don't think that it's inherently bad to have things be open. It's just, like, how did you get there, and was it on purpose is also important
Hmm.
too. Like, I think sometimes you can tell, like, when things are happening for a reason, and whether I even for stories where I don't particularly like it, and even if it's not
Hmm.
open in it, just in general, I can like, if there are stories or plots that I don't particularly love, but I can tell that it was written intentionally, I think I give it a little more grace than one that, like, just kinda stumbles into being a mess, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Or there's
because
just
it's
like
like,
plot
okay,
holes
you're
because they
trying to
didn't
do
think it
something
through.
here, and whether
Yeah.
it like if it doesn't resonate with me, it doesn't resonate with me, but that's a me problem and not like a story problem.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. I think whenever you can pick up plot hole versus like a decision that was made about the plot, like those are the things that I'm like,
Mhm.
if I feel like it feels more if it leans more plot hole than like a decision, then I'm probably not gonna like it as much because I feel like that's kind of like
Mhm.
you had time to like look over your story and fill in the holes by the time
Right,
I
or
got
like
it.
figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, it's cool. Um, yeah, and Adam says it reminds me a lot of older sci-fi, like Philip K. Dick stories where they drop you in what feels like a living world and would focus on a bit, leaving all the rest nebulous. Yeah. And I feel like with this, like, because a lot of us come in with like knowledge of Wakanda and like the Marvel universe, it's easier to do that. Because it like already assumes that you know certain things. Um, so like there are certain things that they explain, but not everything. And there's some stuff that just like this story just says you're a mutant. It expects that you know what a mutant is, at least on like a
Yeah.
surface level. So yeah. So yeah, this was my story for this anthology. I kind of mentioned pretty much why, like the Dora Milaje. I feel like it's cool to get more stories about them. There are a couple others in the book that are cool. Um Using lucid dreaming as like a multiversal like thing, I think is tight. Like I love anything to have to do with multiverse, time travel, any of that. Like let's
I
go.
was I was disappointed by like Multiverse of Madness not taking more advantage of the whole dream walking situation. I was like,
Mm.
this could be a
I
lituation.
haven't seen Multiverse of Madness. I've only seen it the one time.
Hmm.
I need to see it again, but I will never forget going to. I went to see it in the middle of the day by myself. It was 3D was the only one that they had available at the time that I could go, and I remember going into the theater and I was giving them my ticket, and
Hmm.
homegirl was like, "You know this is in 3D, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, it's fine."
Wait,
Um
was it one of those 3D? Is it one of those 3D theaters where it's like it's just 3D, or is it one of those 3D theaters where they have like the shaking
I
chair
think I had to wear the
thing?
glasses. No,
Okay,
it wasn't the shaking. It wasn't that.
okay.
It was just the glasses. Um, and I was just like, "Yeah, whatever, it's fine." And then there were a couple moments where I was like, "Oh." That was a warning that I did not heed.
For those who are
I did
not
not heed that
aware
warning.
about Bayana's horror aversion,
Yeah, I
like
don't
it is.
it's easier for me in books to do horror,
Mhm.
but movies is like really it's a difficult one. I do not enjoy it. So yeah, but I saw that in 3D.
Yeah.
That was
So
unfortunate.
you loved Wanda, like
As soon as that
yeah.
happened, as soon as she started reaching out, I said, "Oh, I've made a mistake." I was like, because before up to then, it was like, you know, it was like a regular Marvel movie. It was fine, whatever, cool. Like there's some creepy-ish stuff, and I was like, it's fine. As soon as she started reaching her hand out, I said, yikes. So
Whereas
I
I'm
will
just
see it
like,
again. I
oh,
did like
are we gonna get more? Is this or this all the horror
uh
like we kept as the story went on? I'm like, that was
no, it
it.
definitely
That
kept
was the horror.
going, and I was like, this is crazy. And the thing is like I knew it. Like they did say, oh, there's horror elements or whatever, but like I've seen movies that had horror elements that weren't actually scary, but they definitely had the like, because there's different elements, one, and there are different ways to like frame something to make it seem like horror or, scary or whatever. So, but I was like, oh, y'all meant horror, like for real, like not just okay, cool.
Dark themes. It's not
Yeah,
dark
not just dark
themes. It
themes.
is
But again,
actual
I
horror.
saw it in the middle of the day. So I was not like, it didn't bother me past once I left, I was fine, but I was definitely like, oh, in the moment, like, oh, dang. And I was really glad that I didn't bring my sister with me because initially we were gonna go together and she would have been horrified. So,
poor horror babies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it. Like we've gotten through this. Thanks y'all for listening. We will be back next week discussing Portia's pick, Bon Temps. That'll be fun. I like that one. I feel like we read that. I think we talked about it last episode. Yeah, it's in New Orleans. As soon as they said you're going to Mardi Gras, I was like, oh, this is about to be Portia's jam. So that'll be fun. Join us for our live recordings. We generally do them on Sundays at 1 p.m., but next Sunday is Mother's Day. So just stay tuned for the updated time and date for next week's on our socials. Or you can just wait till the episode drops on Wednesdays as we do.
Yes, Wizard Team Wednesday is a constant. You can always count on us for that. And you can also count on Wizard Team being part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com and follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.